In 1983, there were 19 Lutheran church bodies or organizations of congregations in the United States and Canada. The three largest of these, the American Lutheran Church, the Lutheran Church in America, and the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, comprise almost 95% of the Lutherans in North America. 5 church bodies work together as members of the Lutheran Council in the United States of America. The council was organized in 1966 and is the first organization in which such a large proportion of America's Lutherans are involved. Previously, for almost half a century, most Lutherans had worked together as members of the National Lutheran Council. Although the Missouri Synod was not a member, it did participate in some activities. In 1958, because its member churches were then merging into 2 new bodies, the National Lutheran Council voted to restudy those aspects of work which could be done in common. Representatives of the Missouri Synod, as well as other Lutheran bodies, were invited to participate. After study, the Missouri Synod and the Synod of Evangelical Lutheran Churches, often referred to as the Slovak Synod, accepted the invitation. The Lutheran Confession served as the basis for discussion in an effort to determine the proper basis for inter-Lutheran cooperation. Participants in the discussions decided that there was such a basis. They approved a constitution for the new Lutheran Council and voted to join. The new council began to function on January 1st, 1967, the 450th anniversary year of the Lutheran Reformation. Many felt that Lutherans in America had taken a major step toward demonstrating unity. Members of the council have cooperated at various levels in such activities as research, publicity, governmental relations, campus ministry, services to military personnel, etc. Council members have also engaged in theological studies together. Such studies have served to clarify the doctrinal positions of the member bodies and have revealed differences among them in areas such as biblical interpretation and the role of women in the church. The decade of the 1980s promises to be one of significant change in the organization of Lutheran church bodies, as a major new merger is scheduled for 1988. What are the roots of the churches which exist on the American scene today? Why are there various American church bodies that call themselves Lutheran? The answer is complicated. Lutheran history in America goes back more than 300 years, when immigrants from predominantly Lutheran countries of Europe began to come to the New World. These immigrants organized congregations, and groups of congregations eventually joined together in synods. The word synod, usually referring to church structures, means an assembly or council, a coming together or walking together in order to carry out the church's mission. At one time, there were over 100 synods in America, but by 1917, this number had dwindled to about 25. The 400th anniversary of the Lutheran Reformation in 1917 helped to remind many Lutherans in America, especially the laymen, of the common heritage they shared. This was a heritage which crossed synodical, national, and cultural lines. It was a heritage rooted in the gospel and the Lutheran confessions. In the spring of 1917, the lay members of the Reformation Anniversary Committee proposed the merger of the General Synod, the General Council, and the United Synod in the South into one united Lutheran Church in America. Organized in November 1918, this new church body drew together most of the Lutheran churches in the eastern part of the United States. These churches trace their history back to the early Dutch, German, and Scandinavian colonists who had settled along the Atlantic seaboard in the 17th and 18th centuries. One of the 18th century founding fathers of Lutheranism in America was the Reverend Henry Melchior Muhlenberg. He is often referred to as the patriarch of American Lutheranism. Under Muhlenberg's leadership, the first Lutheran Synod in America was organized in 1748. It was called the Pennsylvania Ministerium. However, because of geography and culture, most Lutheran congregations continued to exist independently, in virtual isolation from one another. After the American Revolution, more synods were established, especially in New York and then in North Carolina and Ohio. In 1820, an attempt was made to unite these synods and to discourage the creation of any new ones. The General Synod was designed to unite all Lutheran synods in the United States, but some refused to join and others withdrew after a time. About 1830, under the leadership of Samuel S. Schmucker and others, a movement known as American Lutheranism began to develop. The name American Lutheranism was used to describe those Lutherans who were ready to adapt themselves to the English language. They were also ready to accept the Puritan views and the doctrinal indifference of many American Protestant denominations. Schmucker also advocated a very controversial revision of the Augsburg Confession. This new confession, called the Definite Platform, rejected such basic Lutheran doctrines as the real presence of the body and blood of Christ in the sacrament of the altar and the regenerating power of baptism. There were many in the General Synod who objected to the teachings of American Lutheranism. The Reverend Charles Porterfield Krauth, a professor in the seminary of the Pennsylvania Ministerium, was foremost among the defenders of the unaltered Augsburg Confession. In 1866, a split occurred within the General Synod. Led by the Pennsylvania Ministerium, a number of synods withdrew from the General Synod and formed the General Council. A few years earlier, because of the Civil War, the synods of the Confederacy had also withdrawn from the General Synod. They formed the United Synod in the South. These three Lutheran church bodies, the General Synod, the General Council, and the United Synod in the South, merged in 1918 to form the United Lutheran Church in America. We must now return to the previous century to pick up another significant strand in the story of Lutheranism in America. A fresh wave of immigrants began to arrive from Scandinavia during the 1840s. In 1860, the Swedish Lutherans established the Augustana Synod. It affiliated in 1870 with the General Council. However, it did not become a part of the United Lutheran Church in America, but resumed its separate existence. Other Scandinavian Lutherans from Norway settled in Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota during the middle of the 19th century. More numerous than the Swedish immigrants, the Norwegians quickly organized a number of synods which represented a variety of doctrinal positions. The celebration of the 400th anniversary of the Lutheran Reformation in 1917 was the occasion also for the merger of most of these Norwegian synods. In 1946, this church body took the name the Evangelical Lutheran Church. The 400th Reformation anniversary in 1917 also witnessed the merger of the synods of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Nebraska. They formed what is now known as the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Headquarters of the Wisconsin Synod are in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Its seminary is in nearby Mequon. Until 1963, the Synod was a member of the Lutheran Synodical Conference of North America. The Synodical Conference was a federation of several strongly confessional synods in the Mississippi Valley. Established in 1872, it comprised the Missouri, Ohio, Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, and Norwegian synods. Largest of these synods was the Missouri Synod, organized in Chicago in 1847. The Missouri Synod's charter congregations were located in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri. During the half-century following the organization of the Missouri Synod, several million Germans emigrated to the United States. Many of them were Lutherans. With strong support from some Lutherans in Germany, the Missouri Synod attempted to provide a ministry for the immigrants who settled mostly in the Midwest. First president and theological spokesman of the Missouri Synod was Karl Ferdinand Wilhelm Walther. A native of Saxony, he had come to the United States in 1839 in search of the freedom to carry on a ministry in total obedience to the Scriptures and the Lutheran confessions. For almost half a century, Walther led the Missouri Synod. When the Synodical Conference was formed, he was elected its first president. In 1880, as a result of a dispute over the doctrine of predestination, the Synodical Conference began to break up, After 1883, only the Missouri, Wisconsin, and Minnesota synods remained as members. The Ohio Synod withdrew from the Synodical Conference as a result of the controversy and attempted to establish closer relations with the Iowa Synod. Wilhelm Leahy, a pastor in Bavaria, was instrumental in sending a number of pastors to America, particularly for the Missouri Synod. Under his leadership, as a result of doctrinal differences with C.F.W. Walther, some of these pastors, mainly in Iowa, left the Missouri Synod and organized the Iowa Synod in 1854. Although the Iowa Synod had been associated with the General Council, these ties were broken in 1917. At that time, the Ohio and Iowa Synods established fellowship. In 1930, these two synods merged with the Buffalo Synod to form the American Lutheran Church. The years 1917-1918 saw the organization of the Evangelical Lutheran Church, the United Lutheran Church in America, and the Wisconsin Synod. This period also saw the organization of the first cooperative federation of Lutherans in America. The National Lutheran Commission for Soldiers and Sailors' Welfare was organized in 1917. All the major Lutheran groups participated with the exception of the Missouri Synod. In 1918, the Soldiers and Sailors Commission was reorganized as the National Lutheran Council. Until 1966, the council coordinated many activities of its member churches. Several member churches of the National Lutheran Council, the American Lutheran Church and the Evangelical Lutheran Church, among others, established the American Lutheran Conference in 1930. From time to time, attempts were made to unite the synods which belonged to the American Lutheran Conference. A proposal for such a merger, made in 1948, became a reality in 1960. The American Lutheran Church and the Evangelical Lutheran Church merged with the United Evangelical Lutheran Church to form what is now known as the American Lutheran Church. The American Lutheran Church maintains its headquarters in Minneapolis, with seminaries in St. Paul, Minnesota, Dubuque, Iowa, and Columbus, Ohio. In 1956, the United Lutheran Church in America issued a call for Lutheran unity. In response, the Augustana Synod and two other synods of Scandinavian background reached an agreement to merge. In 1962, the Lutheran Church in America was formed. That church's headquarters are located in New York City. Its principal seminaries are located in Philadelphia and Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and Chicago, Illinois. While most Lutheran bodies have resulted from mergers, the Missouri Synod did not. Various smaller synods were absorbed into the Missouri Synod through the years, including the English Evangelical Lutheran Synod of Missouri and other states in 1911, the National Evangelical Lutheran Church in 1965, and the Synod of Evangelical Lutheran Churches in 1971. Headquarters of the Missouri Synod are in St. Louis, Missouri. Its seminaries are in St. Louis and Fort Wayne, Indiana. So it is that today there are three major Lutheran churches in the United States: the Lutheran Church in America, organized in 1962, the American Lutheran Church, organized in 1960, and the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, organized in 1847. The Lutheran Council in the USA currently comprises these three bodies and two smaller ones: the Association of Evangelical Lutheran Churches, formed in 1976 by congregations which left the Missouri Synod because of doctrinal disagreements, and the Latvian Evangelical Lutheran Church, which joined in 1982. While not participating in any mergers, the Missouri Synod has throughout its history sought doctrinal discussions with other Lutherans to discover doctrinal unity and establish fellowship relations. Such efforts with the American Lutheran Church and its predecessor bodies began in the 1920s. Fellowship between the American Lutheran Church and the Missouri Synod was established in 1969. But difficulties soon arose over the question of ordaining women to the pastoral ministry and differing approaches to biblical interpretation. This fellowship was suspended by the Missouri Synod in 1981. Discussions are currently in progress between the American Lutheran Church, the Association of Evangelical Lutheran Churches, and the Lutheran Church in America on the formation of a new Lutheran church body by 1988. Such a merger will mean major changes in the Lutheran Council, and efforts are also underway to determine new ways in which the various Lutheran bodies may carry on cooperative projects. Change is also in the works in this decade for Lutherans in Canada. The Evangelical Lutheran Church of Canada, formed in 1967 by congregations of the American Lutheran Church, is currently engaged in merger discussions with the Canada section of the Lutheran Church in America. Meanwhile, Canadian congregations of the Missouri Synod are working toward the formation of an autonomous church body. At the present time, altar and pulpit fellowship does not exist between all of the American Lutheran churches. They nevertheless continue to seek ways of giving greater witness to the unity they have in Christ and in a common commitment to the symbolical books of the Lutheran Church. The unity that exists in the church exists in Christ. All expressions of that unity that may be established in the future must also be established in Christ, for He alone is Lord of His church.